The O Cannabis Conference and Expo returns to Toronto June 1st through the 3rd, and there's still some good booth locations available. This exciting event is free for cannabis retailers and will feature Tommy Chong receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award at the O Cannabis Industry Awards. For more information about exhibiting or to register to attend, go to ocannabis.com. That's OCANNABIZ.com.
All right, today we're going to take a look at a report from Brightfield Group about changes in cannabis consumer behavior post-pandemic, kind of give us an idea about what people are doing, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, just give us a better idea of maybe the new normal. We'll have to wait and see. Welcome back to The Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. Today we've got Katrina Gogowski, angel investor and attorney, to help us take a look at the Brightfield Group report on changes in cannabis consumer behavior post-pandemic. Katrina, thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, so let's take a look here. An increase in cannabis use by generation. So it looks like there's a percentage that are using more cannabis more frequently. I don't know, maybe because they're at home or they're bored or all of the above, but it looks like Gen Z is increasing more frequently by a tune of 52%. Millennials are consuming at 49%, while Gen X at 45% and baby boomers at 25%. So according to Brightfield Group, the younger consumers are the most likely of all age groups to increase their cannabis usage, with 49% of millennials saying that they have increased compared to just 45% of Gen X and 25% of baby boomers. Millennials are more likely to consider cannabis in a wider total mood modification landscape.
Well, what a new term, mood modification landscape, Josh.
Yeah, I guess that just replaces the words bored or, at home or whatever. But definitely, we're in another stage of lockdown here in Washington State. I think California was just up in arms over being forced to lock down. We saw Paris, basically everyone evacuated Paris before their lockdown. So yeah, I guess that new mood modification landscape is going to, have some cannabis there, especially since it's essential, whereas Massachusetts didn't deem it essential. Certain other places and other areas and other countries deemed, alcohol as not essential. So Pennsylvania banned alcohol for Thanksgiving. So everyone was running out buying alcohol beforehand. The north of France banned alcohol during the pandemic. So it is interesting that sort of cannabis is okay, whereas alcohol is not. Kind of an interesting dichotomy there.
What I like about these figures, though, Josh, is the increase by the baby boomers. We're always talking about the soccer moms and the grandmas to bring cannabis normalcy. That's the pinnacle. That's what the cannabis industry is trying to achieve. And if you can convince the soccer moms and the grandmas that it's not a gateway drug and it's not going to kill you, so I really, really like the baby boomer number.
Yeah, and with a third of people planning on using more cannabis, it just kind of shows that it is normalizing. With younger generations, it's been in music and movies and culture, so there is not that stigma as much. Whereas with maybe baby boomers, they still kind of have that stigma, and they're maybe afraid about THC. And I still have friends that have been smoking pot for decades, longer than I have, and they're still worried about it. So it's definitely still there. The stigma is definitely there, even in a place like Seattle. I have friends that hide the fact that they are cannabis consumers because their non-cannabis consuming alcohol friends don't like it. And this is people that are typically come from, um, in college, they were part of sororities or fraternities, and they are heavy drinkers, or their friends are, and so there's that attitude where alcohol is better than cannabis. But hopefully, through this pandemic, we're kind of seeing that cannabis isn't that bad, and until we get cannabis cafes and show that it is normal, we'll still have some of that left over. But it is fading. A lot of that is going away, thankfully.
Well, I'd rather have grandma have a little bit of blue dream versus cold duck any day. It's
Yeah.
better for her.
All right, looking at increased cannabis use by usage rate. So, not surprisingly, those already using cannabis 5 days a week are most likely to have increased their cannabis usage, with 50% doing so. So, heavy users are also most likely to report using cannabis at higher dosage and/or for longer sessions, with 64% reporting they do so. Heavy users with cannabis already integrated into their lifestyles are unlikely to give up the habit, and they're using more often to handle additional stress and trying to get rid of boredom, like we mentioned. So most of the time at home and cannabis usage are heavily skewed towards small group use. So cannabis is well situated to benefit as an in-home activity during these times. Definitely with Black Friday, there's a lot of talk about technology and video games and stay at home. A lot of things that people are going to be buying for stay at home. People are definitely trying to get over being bored. My puppies are bored. They don't use cannabis, but it's hard for them to be able to get outside, walk around, do what they're going to do because it's winter time. So, if they could choose to do cannabis, they might. They don't have that choice though. So other people are obviously going towards that route, helping them deal with stress during the pandemic. 87%, as a matter of fact, from heavy users say that cannabis helps them deal with stress during the pandemic.
These statistics don't surprise me at all. Right when the pandemic lockdowns came out, we saw a big spike, and it makes sense.
Yeah, with 1/5 of people using it a few times a month, you have a third of people using it at least once to 4 times a week, and then 5 times a week, you have 52% of people. I'm guessing the survey, 52% are using it 5 days or more a week.
It's pricey.
So let's look at the changes in the product type used. Consumers are not changing the product type preferences to a large degree. At the beginning of the pandemic, only 7% of consumers were planning to reduce their use of inhalable cannabis products like flower and vapes. 1/5 of consumers now report reducing inhalable usage, likely a response to the ongoing message that smoking and vaping put individuals at higher risk for infection. And data points that it's been consistent through the summer and into early fall. So, having said that, the response to the stress and boredom of the pandemic is a much larger group at 37%, increasing their usage of inhalables. And there's also been an uptick in edible use at 35% of consumers, indicating using more edible products, which are appealing to, or which appears to be less harmful. So that kind of goes back to that whole issue with combusting and smoking during flu season. So we're seeing 37% are using more inhalables, and 35% are using more edibles, and a fifth are using fewer inhalables. So maybe they're going to be stocking up and hoarding flour, and then maybe using more edibles during the winter time again.
Maybe, but this could just reflect the situation. If you're in an apartment and you can't smoke inside, we all know that cannabis stinks, so you smoke outside. Well, now it's winter and it's cold outside. So you're going to switch to a vape pen, or you're going to switch to an edible so you don't freeze your tuchus off outside. And so these statistics are not surprising to me at all.
Yeah, I've definitely been smoking a lot less blunts. After Sober October, I made the switch to non-tobacco blunts. So I've been doing palm and hemp wraps and stuff, but it's freezing outside. So I've been smoking a lot less blunts outside and going more towards a bubbler. I finally got a new glass piece that I broke last year and waited forever to buy a new piece, but I've got one, and I've been smoking that in the garage where it's warmer. And and actually last night I took some RSO. I had a really bad headache, wanted to sleep in, knocked me out. Man, no amount of coffee is going to help me get out of that funk this morning. But I took a massive amount of RSO, and again, going towards the edibles because I didn't want to smoke a blunt, and all the same reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's changes in cannabis purchasing locations. Today, 45% of all cannabis consumers report switching from shopping at physical dispensaries to delivering or online deliver. So Gen X, they've steadily switched to online ordering as the pandemic has continued, possibly due to increased messaging around the seriousness for people of all ages with the virus. Younger cannabis consumers were the most likely to plan to shift to delivery or online ordering, likely due to greater familiarity and confidence with online ordering. Assuming that you even have that in your state, Washington does not. I assume that to be fast tracked in 2021. Hopefully that will pass. But millennials and Gen X, baby boomers, everyone is increasing the amount that they're purchasing online. And it's probably a lot to do with the discounts. Not only are you able to get in there quicker because you have your order already done, but you're getting at least 10% that I've seen discounts for those online purchases.
That is exactly what I was going to say. This is an opportunity for the cannabis retailer to just drive that loyalty program home. Discounts, points, whatever you want to call it, with online ordering spiking like this. What an opportunity for cannabis retailers.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be a lot more difficult, I think, for brands to be able to get in front of consumers, especially new brands. The bud tender was kind of that go-to, that key person to kind of educate people and tell them. But we are seeing some bud tenders grabbing the bags, the online orders, and then making sure that the person buying it knows what they're doing. So anytime you go into a pharmacy, that individual at the pharmacy will say, have you used this product? Do you know what you're doing? Do you have any questions? So I'm seeing some bud tenders doing the same thing. And then if it's not what the person wanted, they'll just switch that out and give them the same discount. So that is pretty nice. You still get that interaction with the bud tender, hopefully some satisfaction, product guarantee or whatever. But it is going to be a lot more difficult moving forward for new entrants, new markets, new brands to be able to get in front of the consumer in the same way that they were. So that's going to be an uphill battle.
Right.
Changes in cannabis spending. So in March, 30% of cannabis consumers planned on reducing their cannabis spending. In July, 37% that they had reduced spending. But on the flip side, 56% of cannabis consumers had increased their spending. So the trend continued into the fall. 38% of consumers reported reducing spending, but 54% said that they had increased spending in the October survey. So cannabis usage during occasions for relaxing at home and just before sleep saw an uptick in July as more consumers looked for ways to de-stress and fill the time, as many consumers are still spending a great deal of time at home and are not engaging in previously normal social activities.
Makes sense.
Yeah, nothing new there, right? I mean, we kind of figured that even though they maybe have increased the amount that they're spending, they might be still consuming less as they're kind of hoarding it. We did see a lot more people buying large packages. So, an ounce instead of a gram. In Washington, a lot of the producer processors are not packaging as much small quantities. Right now, it's people want larger quantities. And whether or not they're consuming that, I'm assuming not. I think a lot of the times what we're seeing is hoarding.
I wouldn't call it hoarding, Josh. I would say if you are an individual that is possibly risking serious illness by going in just to pick it up because Washington stupidly doesn't have delivery, you're going to want the ounce so you don't have to go routinely. So stocking up, hoarding, I don't think that's the right word. I think you're looking at bulk buys to reduce number of visits.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would definitely agree with you that there's a ton of people that are going in and bulk buying, especially to avoid the pandemic. So my in-laws took their house off the market. They were going to sell their house, but they want to find a house first because they said they don't want COVID being left all over the place. So, there are people that they're just really worried about it, and so they think that there's COVID being left all over retail stores or whatever, and so they just want to avoid that entirely. So I get it. In fact, 54% of all cannabis consumers reported using a higher dosage and for longer sessions, which probably is a good indicator of why edibles are selling so much, is because they're generally a higher dose and last a lot longer. So consumers using cannabis in more expensive ways, like I said, 54% are using higher dose for longer sessions, where only 16% plan to do that back in March. So a lot more people, as this kind of stay at home has been progressing and has been delayed, more people are going towards edibles and not so much topicals and tinctures.
Right.
So changes in cannabis flower use. So while the pandemic has raised concerns about lung health and the use of inhalable products, cannabis flower consumers are tending to smoke more rather than less. So flower users are upping their usage to deal with both the stress and boredom of the pandemic. So of cannabis flower users, 65% are smoking more to deal with the stress of the pandemic, and 60% are smoking more to deal with boredom or to fill the time. So in contrast, 27% said they're smoking less due to respiratory concerns. I expect that to increase a little bit more as we get into, deeper winter months, but all pretty much similar to last year's trends, it seems like.
Yeah. This is interesting. I like how they say to deal with stress, and stress is different for everybody, but it is interesting.
Yeah, we live in uncertain times right now, and so that uncertainty is driving up stress, and so people are going to be looking towards cannabis to relieve some of that. So this going on to this report, it says even though this group is not giving up smoking altogether, rather consumers are doing other things to mitigate the impact of the virus. So 60% say that they're smoking less in social settings in order to maintain social distancing, and 63% are not sharing joints or accessories with other smokers due to hygiene concerns brought on by the pandemic. So we sell a lot of pre-rolls in Washington State. I would imagine that not going to work or not having those social interactions are going to really kind of devastate that pre-roll market, even though it's low cost. I think people are probably going to go more towards bulk flower or edibles or other products, while pre-rolls kind of take a hit. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that would be interesting data from Washington, because the pre-rolls sell like 3 to 1 of everything else, and I wonder if that statistic has held, Josh.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. All right, I guess we're just gonna have to come back and see how pre-rolls are doing. So I want to thank my guest, Katrina Gogowski, angel investor and attorney. Thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thanks, Josh.
With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
How do cannabis CEOs balance growth and optimization strategies? What is THCO, Delta 10, and CBNA, and why should you care about these minor cannabinoids? And why isn't the endocannabinoid system covered in medical school? Most people think they're up to date in trends in the cannabis industry, but they're about 6 weeks behind. Learn about what is truly next in the cannabis space by joining myself, Brian Fields, and Kellen Finney every week on the Dime Podcast, and of course, on PodConnects.